I'm using the largest bedroom in my house as a workspace and studio. When you have thousands of items that are completely disorganized, it's overwhelming, but I have a great strategy for dealing with a mess like this. I'm starting by removing bulky items that won't be staying in this room and knocking down my water bottle. Relocating large items makes you feel like you've made a lot of progress and gives you more space to work with. I like to separate things into relocate, donate, keep, and sell piles. I say piles, but in this case, I'll be separating items into boxes. As I'm looking through my boxes, looking for things to donate, keep, and sell, I'm separating things into like categories, like putting all of my dollhouse miniature kits together and my paints. So even though right now my main goal is to remove items from the room that don't need to be in here, I'm also separating things into categories to make organizing easier later. I'm making decisions quickly because I can finesse this process a little bit more later, but right now I just want to remove a lot of the bulk that's overwhelming from this room and separate things as I go. This isn't a point where you want to start looking through an old photo album or Googling how much you can sell something for, because you're making quick decisions to make the process less overwhelming. In my case, these items are in boxes because I just moved, but your clutter may be in dressers and closets, etc. In your situation, you may have the satisfaction of clearing a dresser or a closet, but in my case, I'm emptying boxes, which will be able to be removed from the room and make more floor space. I'm using this workspace to create dollhouse miniatures, so I'm using this large U-Haul box to hold all of my wood. When I was packing to move, this is the only box that would fit this big plastic organizer, so I'm removing that and adding more wood I can store together later. Things tend to look a lot worse before they look better, so now I'm surrounded by a bunch of empty boxes I'm breaking down to store in my garage. In the past, I've sourced free boxes from grocery stores and liquor stores, so this is the first time I purchased boxes and it did make moving easier. I removed some of the items off camera, but this is an idea of some of the things that don't need to stay in this room and we're just taking up visual and mental space. I'm setting up shelving and bins around the perimeter of the room, so I'm storing all of the clutter in the center until I'm ready for it. These are the items that are staying in my studio. This is a little box full of silicone and rubber molds. I always have lots of paper products, including egg cartons. I got most of these plastic organizers from Goodwill. These are textiles and sewing notions. I don't even know what sewing notions are, so that may be wrong. Colored pencils and pens. I also have my paint and plaster together, as well as my wood products. These are items I almost exclusively got from Goodwill that I'm hoping to fill with miniatures in the future, as well as miniature kits. I'll be finding homes for all of these items within this room, but here's what you can do with stuff that you want to hold on to, but you don't necessarily want to organize into your space. I started by labeling this box 5L. I'm using the free Samsung Notes app to take note of the label and the description of the box, which in this case is 5L small. I'm writing down what the box contains. This is a searchable app, so if I'm ever looking for my airbrushes, I can search for it and I will find this little note. I'm also taking note that it's in an upstairs closet, so I'll be able to locate it freely. In my garage and closets, I also have labeled boxes like this, so I can search in my app to quickly locate a box and don't have to dig through multiple boxes and their contents. As a miniature maker, I have so many items that are completely random and are also tools and weird materials that are hard to organize. I like to use a pegboard system to store these items. I'm installing the pegboard around this corner with my work desk in front of it. To install the pegboard, first I started by using a stud finder to locate the studs, and now I'm marking on the pegboard where I need to drill my screws. If I screw this pegboard directly to the wall, there won't be any space for the hooks, so I'm hot gluing some wooden pieces to the back. These wooden pieces will serve double duty, both as adding spacers and a place that I can drill my screw through into the studs to make this a secure installation. I'm installing this pegboard by myself, so I'm hot gluing the wooden pieces so they'll easily be held in place when I go to drill them into the studs. The hot glue is just a temporary measure, and it is not how I am attaching this to the wall. I'm attaching my little pieces of plywood in the places that I'll be drilling through them into a stud. There are no studs at the corner of this pegboard, and I don't want them to be floppy, so I'm hot gluing some layers of foam core scraps just to fill the void. Now I'm ready to hang the pegboard. I started by partially drilling my screws into the pieces of wood that I hot glued to the back, so they're already in position and I can easily put them in the studs. I started in the upper right corner and the upper left corner, so it's nice and secure while I attach the bottom screws. I used the same methods to install another piece of pegboard into the corner. I used scraps of 3/8 inch thick plywood on the back, which is plenty of space to allow these hooks from Harbor Freight to fit in the pegboard. I got this adjustable height desk base from eBay a couple of years ago for only $100 or so. I'm reinstalling the desktop I used at my previous house, which is a piece of Pure Bond plywood. The base for my adjustable height desk can also be adjusted for width, so I have it set to the widest setting. I determined the size of the tabletop I wanted and had Home Depot cut the plywood so I could fit it in my car and so I wouldn't have to cut it myself. I copied the dimensions from Desks for Sale online to come up with the numbers. I chose Pure Bond plywood even though it's a bit more expensive because it isn't made with formaldehyde, so it won't off-gas into my workspace for years. Working under the desk, I'm screwing the brackets into the underside of the desk, making sure I don't use screws that are so long they'll poke through the top of my table. I'm also installing the electrical components which control the height of the desk. I ended up having to flip this entire desk around because I installed it going the wrong direction, but this is the control mechanism that controls the height of the desk. This will end up in the corner of the room near my pegboard. I figured out where I'll be filming at my desk and installed my camera arm. I hung it just high enough that I can walk underneath it without hitting my head on it. In my previous workspace, I was constantly bumping my head on my control arm, which made the camera wobbly and was also annoying. When I moved, I packed the items that were hanging on my pegboard previously so I can easily add them back to the wall. I have a good idea of where I would like things to hang, but I'm not being too obsessive about the location because as I work in the space, I'll figure out a better workflow and will move things later. My paper cutter doesn't have a space for hanging, so I drilled my own hole. For items in paper or plastic bags, I use a hole punch. I got some cheap plastic shelves from Dollar Tree, which are pretty insecure, so I helped reinforce them using some Beacon 3-in-1. I used double-sided flooring tape to secure these floppy corners. I added 2 pegs to my pegboard with some fishing line to hang this thread holder. When you pull the thread off of the holder, it might flop around, so I used some more double-sided tape to secure it. This pegboard system makes tools and supplies readily accessible and is a great way to store oddball items I might forget I own if I stored them elsewhere. This plastic cart and plastic storage bin are to the right of my workspace to hold more supplies. I didn't realize how many supplies fit in my 3-tier cart until I dropped it down the stairs while I was moving. In my old studio, I had a few of the plastic drawer units that fell apart when I was moving, and often the tops get dented and the drawers become hard to pull out, so I have a nice upgrade from Temu. There are multiple sizes and styles available, so I got a few of these systems to replace some of my plastic drawer units. They came in a flat box and are very easy to assemble by popping up the sides. I like how stylish this looks with the ribbed smoky plastic to obscure the contents and this faux leather handle. There's a plastic solid piece to cap off the top, and then the rest of the bins just snap below this one. I buy lots of stuff from Temu, but Temu was kind enough to send me 4 of these bin systems for free. They do come with wheels, but I won't be rolling anything around in my carpeted workspace, so I didn't use those. I ended up choosing 4 different bin systems so I could have a nice variety. This style is a bit bigger than the first and has 2 front doors. None of these cubby spaces are as big as the drawer systems I'm replacing, but I sort of did that by design because the drawers were overcrowded and it became difficult to find items and access them. I'm not too concerned about the aesthetics of this room since I won't be entertaining in here and it is just a workspace, but it is nice to have these attractive storage systems that function a lot better than what I had before. Some of these items were stored on open shelving in my previous studio, so it'll be nice to hide them behind doors. This space is to the right of the corner with my desk and the camera system, so I want to store things that I might need more often. Since these are supplies I'll be using frequently, I'm storing them on a shelf to make them more easily accessible. I ordered this shelving system from Amazon and I can link it below. When I was looking for a shelf, I wanted something that's wide enough to suit my needs but not too big. I also paid close attention to the depth of the shelf based on the things I knew I'd be storing here to make sure nothing was hanging off the front and I could actually use it for the needs I have. It came together easily and included the tools I needed for assembly. I mostly followed the instructions to assemble the shelf and I was watching the movie Fall Guy. Throughout much of the organizational process, I was listening to the show Roseanne from the 80s and 90s. I really love that sitcom because I watched it a lot as a kid, so it's very nostalgic for me, although I haven't seen the most recent seasons. I started by assembling the 4 corners and then dropped one of the shelves in place, which helps stabilize it. I partially assembled it, then moved it into the room to make sure it'll fit the piece I want to store on here. The gray bin on the left of the shelf holds most of my miniature trash that I use to make minis from scratch. I'm dwindling the large pile in the center of the room even more by adding things to the new shelf. I assembled another shelf from Amazon, and this time I'm watching The Office as I organize. I don't often invest in matching storage solutions, but I really love these stackable drop front shoe boxes I got from Walmart a couple of years ago. I'm talking on the phone to my best friend who lives in Canada while I sort through some of my papers. I have a lot of magazine cutouts and things I found in flyers, etc. to make miniature magazines, books, use the decals, because I do like to avoid printing anything when I'm making miniatures. That being said, I also have Etsy printables and some vintage printies. While editing this footage, it's the first time I ever saw the back of this shirt, and I had no idea it has this black pattern on it, so that was interesting. As I go, I'm still creating keep, donate, sell, recycle, trash, and relocate piles. On the other side of the doorway that goes to the bathroom and the closet, I assembled the same exact shelf with the same shelf spacing so it looks less chaotic. I'll be storing seldom used supplies on this shelf since it's farthest from my desk. I have a lot of plastic organizers I mostly got from Goodwill by the pound, which I'm separating things into so I can easily find stuff when I'm making miniatures from scratch. That was my collection of trash plastic, but I also have a collection of silicone molds I got from Temu, Amazon, and Etsy. I'll be storing all of these items on my gray shelf. I recently used these molds to make wall panels, and I had no idea where they were before I organized this studio space, so it made it easier to do that video without having to locate them first. I haven't been brave enough yet, but I will be using these mason jar molds I got from Etsy someday to see how that turns out. These are the food molds I filled with excess plaster in my wall panel video. These are from Etsy, and I plan to use them someday when I make my miniature bakery. This is the silicone pot holder I got from Goodwill that I used to make miniature hexagon tiles. I've been keeping some spaces empty, so I'm leaving myself room to accumulate stuff or reorganize in the future. There's still a lot of random stuff in here, so I added a third piece of pegboard to the left of my new shelving unit so I can store some more things on the wall. In my old studio space, this piece of pegboard was across the room, so it's a lot more functional being beside the other two pieces. I'm installing a wire shelf I got from Goodwill by the pound using the brackets it came with. I'm using short screws screwed directly into the plywood scrap beneath to minimize how many holes I put in my walls. Even though I spaced the brackets too close to one another, it's more than adequate to support some lightweight items. Throughout the course of organizing this space, I was using my desk to craft miniatures and make videos, and it kept getting more and more chaotic. My space tends to get extremely messy if I don't have a home for things, so hopefully this is as bad as it'll ever get and I'll be able to maintain a clean workspace going forward. To clean off my tabletop, I'm separating items into bags like tools, materials, and putting things back if there's a place where they already have a home. For the rest of my house, I make sure everything has a home I can return it to, and I clean every single day so it never gets out of hand. It really is a lot easier to maintain a clean space rather than letting it get completely chaotic and having to spend hours fixing it. I have trash and recyclables that are ready to leave the room, and I organized my wood on top of my plastic Temu bins. The wood is in oatmeal containers with the labels removed, and there are rocks in the bottom so they don't topple. I also bought this great vanity from Temu and office chairs so I could organize my makeup. Amazon sells the same vanity for 50% more, and this shipped from a local warehouse, so I got it in 2 days. To the right of my makeup vanity, I added this plastic table with one of my old drawer systems underneath. I will mostly leave the Harry Potter project items on top of this table. I had 2 large boxes on the bottom of one of my shelves, but these are items I will barely ever be using, so instead I tucked them underneath the plastic table. It is extremely gratifying to finally be vacuuming this space now that I can see the floor. I prioritized so many things ahead of this room that it took me 5.5 months to get it sorted. Starting in the left corner, I have my Temu vanity, followed by my folding table and my adjustable height table with the pegboard system behind it. To the right of that, I have a shelving unit, the entrance door, and another shelving unit. Between the 2 gray shelving units, there's a built-in bookshelf, and to the left of that is the door to the bathroom. To the right of the gray shelves, I have my wall of Temu bins, and then in the corner, my vanity. I'm not one to favor aesthetics over frugality or practicality, so this workspace works really well for me. By thrifting some plastic storage pieces, I saved a lot of money, as well as using cardboard boxes and reusing things like the oatmeal containers. You can support me by joining my Patreon either as a free member or as a paying member for $3 a month. Most of the miniatures I've made are stored on this built-in bookshelf, but in the future I plan to display them around my room, so look out for that video.